Well, here we are. Welcome back to the Markcast, your special live Friday edition. I do prefer to do these, although I have learned from our CFL pregame show last night that a hard scheduling that sometimes. So obviously, Andy can do it here today. We can get on that, but I do prefer the live show. We can take some comments and all of that stuff. Back in the office today, raining in Seattle, a little different. Seth, the listener, Seth has helped me have this whole new standing desk situation. So it looks a little different. But we're back here. I'm going to pull up all my notes and everything, but I'll bring in my co-host here. I have my BC Lions hat on. Raise your hand if you are an undefeated team in the CFL right now. Huge win over the Calgary Stampeders last night. Andy, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on last night. And yeah, a resounding victory for the BC Lions and just an outstanding performance for Vernon Adams Jr. I mean, he was really on fire from the get-go. He was really crisp. His passes were accurate. They moved the offense with ease 2 out of the first 3 drives. He had a big touchdown run in the second half, and they looked really solid. I think that was a great, solid win for them on the road at Calgary. I'm curious to see how it goes going forward with him, and obviously see if he can keep that consistency going into the remaining games. But yeah, really great sign so far for him.
Yeah, the CFL season is a marathon, not a sprint. So, I mean, I got all excited last year. I'm like, hey, we're going to the Grey Cup. Like, let me go buy my seats. And then Nathan Rourke and all of that. We all know what happened. But here we are today. Max is checking in. JK here. No news. Retaining. We want to retain quarterbacks. We are plotting the XFL 2024's course today. So I was really proud. I have my little roadmap. If you notice on the roadmap, it leads to St. Louis, which is where the XFL championship game should be next year. So that was a little Easter egg in that. But we are plotting the XFL 2024's course today. I have our dissertation of notes from Max and everything else coming off. Andy and I were here last week talking that we had the layoffs and kind of the Janet Dukes of the world and all that. What do you have any fallout from that before we get into our exercise today?
Not much since we discussed it last. I mean, again, it's a new banner for the league. It's their ideas going forward. Again, I haven't really seen much activity from the social media pages. I think there was that one from the Arlington Renegades that, the Disney themed little post that they made, and I don't think there hasn't really been much activity other than that that's been worth of note. So for them, I'm sure there's a lot of backdoor planning and trying to assess where their staff is and what they're going to do as far as who is going to be in what role going into the offseason. I'm not sure when we're going to see any sort of results from those moves. Maybe perhaps after the draft, maybe in July. It's really not accurate as to what timeline there is now for the social media staff, although we are going to talk about the timeline in general today.
Yeah, I feel better now. I don't know. I think that we've talked expectations and, what did we want going into, I've asked Mike Mitchell, was the memory of XFL 2020, was that too heavy on this and people? And I had told people for, years now, really, like, hey, this could be their own thing, but yet we're still holding them to these expectations. Now, I do think, okay, we've Danny Garcia's words, we've gotten the monkey off our back here. We're moving forward, kind of all of that stuff. I will say on the rookie draft, so it's scheduled, for next Friday. I would really like to know when that's going to be. I have to work in the evening. So I heard afternoon to evening for that. We would like to do a show. So if we could get the information on that, not a lot of information from the rookie draft. Maybe I was hoping that would come down today here, a week out from that, but figuring that out, I think that's a good place. I think that having a couple tentpole events, and we're going to talk kind of local marketing events, but a couple tentpole national, like, okay, we can post about this, get a little bit of pub, the rookie draft and then the supplemental drafts and all of that. Anything else like high range, social media, but anything else you would like to see the XL working on right now?
Right now, besides recruiting players, again, is just trying to get more efforts into local markets and trying to be able to maybe get back on the horse of getting people into the loop of renewing season tickets for next year. I know we've seen that in a couple efforts, say, for example, Orlando, I know was one market we looked at. I think Seattle, I'm not sure if we've seen Seattle do that, but I want to see that from all the teams in the league. I don't want to just see it from like individuals who happen to be on the ball and really know what they're doing as far as their strategy and getting people involved and trying to get people renewed for season tickets. It needs to be a league-wide effort. And that can't just be something you can wait until fall to do.
Yeah, we got John Lewis here checking in. Got to fix that Vegas stadium woof, and then we have Luis here. I really think Orlando would benefit from leaving, or leaving Camping World, going to next door to the soccer stadium. Seats 25,000. I know we got to get this stadium situation figured out here, especially with the Vegas of it all. We'll see where that ends up. I mean, we're taking season ticket deposits for that. It certainly seems like that, but then we've also laid off a good portion of the Vegas marketing, sales staff. So not quite sure about that. Max has put together this incredible dissertation for us today, kind of going through it, talking about everything, all of this stuff. First and foremost, and I really like this. So he has this broken down at national marketing. We need to come up with a stronger identity than just opportunity. People don't buy into sports just because they exist. They buy it because of the passion of the players and the coaches. I know like the player 54 thing, and obviously that was an easy kind of kicking off point for The Rock. And like, what did we bring The Rock in? And he's going to talk, and he's kind of got his bullet points, and now he's off doing, Fast 87 or whatever, and the Moana sequels. But I think we need to figure out what the XFL is now than just it's a stepping stone to get somewhere else. What do you make of that?
I agree in a sense. I understand why most of the people are here. Okay. I'm not a stranger to the idea of most of these players and coaches going on to the next level, because quite frankly, that's kind of how they pitch this league. And I'm not opposed to it. I do think there is a space for people who want to come back and play and maybe become, in a term, spring football lifers. Now, this isn't something that's really been around for that long. And obviously some players, I think, prefer to play in the upper level because there's more financial stability. There's a lot more consistency. Obviously, having a league that exists beyond 3 years is a novel concept that we're still working on right now. Even the USFL players feel that way too, I'm sure. So there's not this ideal of, like, say with the CFL, where that's going to stay around. The brand is there, the tradition is there, the history is there. You can stay there and at least feel comfortable if you're resigned to the fact that you're not going to be playing in the NFL. So it's, I guess in a way, it depends on if Danny and The Rock and I suppose Russ Brandon want to start pushing it that way, where they say, hey, this is actually a long-term proposition for our players and coaches if they want to be able to stick around. But to be honest, I don't know if financially they can say that with the utmost confidence. It's not that they don't want to, but they just have to be careful about where they're treading and what they're promising along the way, right? So, I think in that sense, yes, I would like them to maybe change their messaging slightly in saying that this is something that people can latch onto and stay around for a long time if they wish to. But I don't expect that messaging to change, at least for the next couple of seasons.
I've said this a couple of times, and just on here as well, just as we're doing all of this today, I don't want to be redundant, but talking with Greg Parks a couple weeks ago, I think the WWE NXT model of what that used to be, they kind of, when Vince came back and he had left the company and then came back, it's different now. It's like NXT 2.0, and it's like this tie-dye multicolor. Back when NXT started, NXT was the developmental brand that was in Orlando that the WWE would, train their talent and get them to go up. And it was like Ohio Valley Wrestling, and then it became NXT. They decided, hey, let's film this, right? Let's get the guys used to this, whatever. Then they realized, hey, this could actually be a really viable TV product, right? Maybe we'll get 100,000 people, 200,000 people to watch this show. And what they did a phenomenal job of doing was balancing. We're going to have storylines here that you want to see every week. We're going to pay a little bit more. We're not going crazy. We're going to pay a little bit more. Hey, you can be here. You can live in Orlando, whatever. We'll spotlight you. Other people want to go be on the main roster, get their big paycheck and do all that. But they balanced having compelling storylines that people wanted to see week in and week out, while also knowing that a good portion of those people weren't going to be there come 9 months later, or 6 months later, a year later. And I think that they with The Rock and what they know with WWE, you need to look at that as a model of, we have to create the XFL, has to be compelling on its own. Someone in the chat with the YouTube comment like 2 weeks ago said, the XFL would not exist, it seems, if it weren't for the NFL, because it really seems like the XFL's only purpose is, we want to get players to the NFL. Where at least USFL seems to exist a little bit more of like, we are our own minor league and we've got people in Birmingham or Memphis, like we're coming out and hanging out. It seems like if there was no NFL, there would be no XFL, and it shouldn't be that way. The XFL should be able to stand on its own, especially as we found out there is no NFL Alumni Academy, discussion anymore. I know we have some vague partnerships with testing rules and all of that, but I think the XFL needs to figure out how can we be compelling on our own.
Well, and maybe that begins with maybe not mentioning the NFL as much in the broadcast, but that's something that they have to talk to ESPN about and be able to communicate that with their broadcast partners as far as what they want to be known for. Now, again, like, ESPN's going to do what they want. Obviously, they're going to just say and kind of present it the way that they want to, but there at least has to be some sort of cohesiveness or understanding that goes between them and the XFL. But you're right. The USFL at least seems to be in a holding pattern of, well, okay, it's cool if you go over to the NFL, but we are establishing ourselves as a viable league and an entity. I feel that way for several leagues. I don't like, you don't see this messaging in, for example, the IFL. I don't really see that so much. I don't see that in FCF. Certainly, that's not that they're not like saying, "Hey, we're trying to send you this other league." I think for the XFL, I get why, in terms of, again, the whole idea of you need to present an opportunity or a chance, a step ladder, right? Being able to ascend as a player and a coach or as a personnel member that can get greater opportunities. That's fine. But maybe if there's a way to show that rather than say that, right? Instead of it being your messaging, it just being implied, saying like, hey, look, we know you're probably going to move on, but we're not trying to push you out the door. If you want to devote more of your resources to certain people in covering their stories, because, say, like, for example, Ben DiNucci, who we all knew was trying to go back to the NFL, if you don't want to put as much resources into that, that's fine, right? Like, that's okay. You just don't have to make it obvious, because the players are kind of already telling you that in their own way. So it's the same thing, like, last year with the CFL with Nathan Rourke. I'm sure, like, if every Canadian would have loved to just have him around forever and ever and ever. I certainly wouldn't have minded. He was phenomenal to watch last year, but we all knew what his intentions were before he even put out his statement at the end of his tenure with the BC Lions. So yeah, it's a tough line to straddle, but you have to know when and where to kind of like put your resources as what you're trying to promote, because it's hard to just say like, yeah, we know you're going, and we're going to tell everyone else we know that you're going. Like that, I could see where that maybe is a little bit, in a way, discrediting your product in your league.
Max also says here, maybe if you are going to focus on the opportunity, maybe have a little bit more like last chance you or something, like this is their last opportunity. I don't like that, because I would like to think like these players, we can thrive in the XFL. Like this isn't a do or die situation making it back to the NFL, but I get that. In terms of social media, it seemed to me, at least, that teams have been active here, and maybe it's just my Twitter timeline. How would you rate the last 2.5 weeks kind of following the XFL championship game? Like how is the XFL social media has been?
I mean, it's pretty quiet, aside from the announcements that came out, I think, a week afterwards with the draft. I haven't really seen a whole lot. I mean, there's the showcases as well. Like I said, they announced the showcases, but as far as consistent activity, the only other thing I noticed a lot is YouTube keeps posting highlight videos, which is good. Like that's what I asked for, right? I think about a week ago or 2 weeks ago, I said, please continue to post highlight videos, and maybe even post like, extended plays of games. Like, I guess you could say classic games, which is hilarious because it's only been around for not for so long, but maybe something of that nature where you could sort of really attest to like certain great moments during the season. Keep pushing out content like that. I think we had a highlight video of one of the players the other day. I can't remember which one, but we've had a few. Yeah, we've had a few that have come out. Max Borghi, that's right. I was watching the Max Borghi tape and kind of re-looking at like some of his best runs of the season. Jalen McClendon, who didn't get a lot of play, but maybe you start to put out players who maybe are going to come back. Or that's the thing. Like which highlight videos do you try to highlight more? The people that for sure have moved on, or the ones that you think might be coming back. So that's also another strategy you have to consider. But yeah, these highlight videos have been good. That's on their YouTube page. I like that they've been pushing those out. It's just more of like the Twitter sphere that I haven't seen as much on. So that's one thing to consider. But as far as YouTube goes, I actually have been pleased, at least in the last, I'd say, month and a half, of them really starting to actually use and push out that content. Because that's one thing I wasn't crazy about in 2020 was their YouTube page. I didn't think it was very organized, and I don't think they properly utilized it.
I know they're getting that down. Remember when we had the promo video, whatever, with the new, and it was like leaked on YouTube, and was it Seth or whatever posted about that? I do laugh when the XFL, because it does seem like they're getting more consistent in their posting. The first ever when they did their coaches roundtable, they posted it like right at the same time on Friday that we post our episodes. I remember Max like texted me, it's like, this is the end of the Markcast. Like you're gonna have to, you can't go live at, you can't do it 7. I said, let's just see here. I think the thing ran 3 episodes, or I think they did a North and a South. And who is it? Woodson didn't even show up. Like it wasn't even on there. But I think they're getting more consistent, because like, here's the deal. You have a lot of that stuff anyway. So like repurposing that, I mean, just pay some interns sitting there, $50K a year, and hey, edit one of these every day. I have many a kid that would intern for me that would do that probably for free, but let alone for a salary. But yeah, you just pay someone to do that. He hasn't here yet. Managing, getting more people hired. I don't like, we talked about this last week, and I have a couple shorts to share as well. I've been busy this week with work, but like, the off-season, on-season hiring of the XFL, that can't permeate to like social. I think you need to have social people there. I have a feeling if you track the way some of the capitalizations of some of the social media tweets are, I have a feeling there's a little bit of double dipping right now, which I don't like. I would like to see 8 dedicated people. I understand finances, and if we have to move people around or whatever. Have you noticed that? Am I the only one that's noticed? It seems like the Arlington Renegades social media person now is like, DC Defenders are kind of doing that, or Houston. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, just a little bit. I think there was enough background commentary that might have led to that change, but I just wish that there was more. I hate to use the creativity because that's such a vague term, but there just doesn't seem to be the same level of kind of understanding, or at least in tuneness to the community, that there was with the social media accounts of 2020. There's
with Bailey.
The content was just, it was really fun. It was really electric in a lot of ways. I really liked how they presented certain ideas or certain things. But I'll be honest, Reed, like the same thing happens in the NFL. Like I could tell you a slew of accounts that just are just really bland, boring, mayonnaise vanilla paste sandwich, that just like don't have a lot going with them as far as their presentation of their content, or just seem to be a little tone deaf. But other accounts that are great, and I know I've sang their praises before 100 million times, but like the Charger social media account gets it. Like they also put resources and they devote themselves into having like real like planning into what they do. So with 8 teams, I think it's more obvious because there's so few options. You notice it much more. With the NFL, you don't see it because it's like, well, I don't follow 16 of the teams in the league, so I don't care. But with the XFL, that is more important because you are seeing every individual team more often. So you have to, for lack of a better term, just devote more resources to each one if you're going to really make sure all of their content at least has a certain baseline of quality to them.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you. Like, what do the Patriots tweet? Do the Patriots tweet like Bill Belichick? Like they're not happy, not good, not good. It is funny though. Yeah, we've been joking a lot online that whoever seems to be running the Arlington account it has a sudden lack of non-capitalizing anything in the sentence, and I'm like, that's nearly impossible on the phone. Like you almost have to go back. Like it auto corrects it to capitalize, so you almost have to go back and like, no, I'm negating that. Like it's a very purposeful choice for that. I will say, we talked about this before. The time to maximize the social media is right now, where you have all 8 teams under one roof. That if, God willing, the XFL franchise, in 2030 here, we're talking about I don't even know who about Malcolm Morris buying. He's got the Seattle Sea Dragons, right? Malcolm Morris, part owner of the Kraken. We've got Ryan here, Ben Higginbotham, right? Isn't that his name? Ben, whatever. Anyway, we got Malcolm Moore owning the Seattle Sea Dragons. Like, then, hey, maybe he wants to devote a lot more money to the social media, and maybe we have the Vegas team has been relocated and they don't want to pay any money anymore. Like that, then you're going to have disparity. But right now, where you have all the teams, this really is there should not be an excuse for any subpar social media across the board, I don't think.
Well, also, didn't they say they were going to do more content in-house in Arlington? Like, that was their whole shtick that they were kind of like going through before the season started. So I didn't really see that level of consistency across the board because they've been operating out of the hub for most of the season, right? Like, they come back and they do their practices and everything. So I don't really get why there wasn't more. Maybe there just wasn't enough time for their mediation. Like, they weren't able to like kind of get everyone in the same room and like talk about this on a consistent basis. I'm not sure. And again, what's going to be interesting is finding out, if we can, in hindsight, how much time was really spent on each thing. Like, are there things that had like how often were there mediations for this versus this, or like did they think about this before they thought about this? And I know that's been a conversation we've had a lot of times about what are they trying to make sure works first before what works best, right? Like, and sometimes there's things that with the play on the field, that's the most important. I understand that getting the players, the coaches, people bought into the league, that's the most important first. And also paid, right? Everybody gets paid, because that's been a very missing key component in the past with leagues. But in this case, still there's just all these like little peripheral things where I wonder if they could reassess how they spend their time or what they do with their time in terms of maybe getting everybody on the same page, because that seemed like it was just kind of, it was all over the map in some ways. And that goes the same with the broadcast too. Sometimes on ESPN, like some I think were just more prepared than others, to be honest, and some had better, resourcing. Some people had better ways of collecting information. Some had better scripts as far as like how they were going to present each game. So that level of consistency is something that they need to really evaluate in the off season.
I love all of the ESPN people. I love everyone that came on the show. I love the XFL's partnership with ESPN. But yeah, you get a feeling sometimes. I'm like, I could just talk for myself right now and probably get a little bit more access on that. Haley checking in here from the Sea Dragons. Ben Haggerty, she would gladly work for Ben. So good to know if when Malcolm Moore, I think he's coming to Climate Pledge too. We also spoiler. This is a side tangent. We are getting the Pitbull, Enrique Iglesias, Ricky Martin tour coming here to Seattle Climate Pledge. It's called the Trilogy. We did not get floor seats for this that I looked at. $750 to go see Enrique. We are upstairs. We are paying $180. We're front row, but we're upstairs. But I just said $750 for that. But anyway, Bego with that. You were talking, the Dallas thing, the content house and all of that. I remember even when I was there with Danny in Arlington, she goes, we have all the resources here. We're going to kind of use all this. I know that's separate. Like, then there was the actual physical content house that didn't seem to be worked about too much, but it did feel like, and I know that we went through turnover with some of the teams and things this year, but it did feel like sometimes I would talk with a team's comm person and it would be like, oh yeah, I can get this person like 2 seconds, no problem at all. And then other times you would talk with like a different team and they're like, I don't know where this person is. It's like, I thought the whole point of being in the hub was everybody like, and again, and I think people did a tremendous job this year, but working on that. What did you make of the content house? I know people said it was like a TikTok thing or they went live on Instagram. Like, what was the content house?
I a couple of times, but again, not enough to catch my attention. I know there was some TikTok videos posted separately from different team accounts, but I didn't really see any sort of like cohesive, like across the board consistency with all of those platforms. I didn't really see it. And that's why I was a little bit confused about, especially on Twitter. Like I said, Twitter, I think that the main account posted fairly often, the XFL account, but again, the individual team accounts, I did not see as much as like the posting from inside the content house. Didn't we get a video about the introduction of all the social media managers,
which I love? But that was I think Leah posted that. I love that. I mean, that was one of the best things, and The Rock retweeted it. But that was Yeah, you saying you wish the league would do more of that? I would like that because that was, I think Leah posted that, and then everyone shared that with Jay and Haley and everyone else. Yeah, I enjoyed that because, especially in Twitter, you have a lot of like I have an avatar. I'm yelling at you. Like I like seeing the people behind the social media. Like this is the person you're yelling at. Like, could you please pretend like this person? Like it's like we come on here every week and people are crap talking. Like I come on here every week and put my dumb face on here. Like at least yes, I like that. But that was not the league that did that.
I think more of that, and also maybe just a little bit more banter back and forth. I don't know if you need to do trash talking. I know the USFL tried to do that with their accounts, and it always just seemed cute to me because I don't think they really had much to go with it on that. And sometimes I almost feel like it was the same or two teams that felt like they were tweeting at each other with the same person with the same handle. Like it was just kind of like a manufactured argument. I saw a little bit of that with the XFL team accounts. Sometimes there'd be a little bit of back and forth and banter on certain things, especially when during the season, once there were teams that actually play each other and the results that were being had. But I want to see maybe more of that, or just again, more transparency as far as who are these people, what are they doing, and also like what's going on in the content house, because that seemed to almost set up like a reality TV kind of esque scenario in a way, like kind of Days of Our Lives, what's going on here, what's happening in the XFL hub, and you don't have to wait for player 54 to come out week and a half after like every single result. Maybe can we have more up to date kind of timeline stuff, and you're really able to see it as it's happening, right? So maybe more of that would have been perhaps a little bit more connected for the fans. Again, if you're talking about connecting to the fans, there's one way to do it.
I like to where the XFL, it seemed like a conscious. I think Mike Mitchell at least reported this to us. I don't know if he reported it. Like XFL made a more conscious effort. Like we're gonna retweet fan tweets here, right? If you're, it could be Mike's tweet, or it could be like I know Evan, whatever. But we find random fans whatever tweet, and they're like Emery Hunt would be at the game and tweet. I like seeing that. I like seeing the league account do that. I don't know if they could do more of that. If you did have someone like Haley or Leah or Jay or someone like, hey, I'm posting the social media stuff here, like highlighting more of that as well. But I like that. I like feeling like the NFL is a very hard, we have it's the shield and we are the NFL. We don't need you. I like seeing the exit like, hey, it's more of a party on here. Come on here. We're going to share your stuff. We're going to interact with that. I like that. I think you could, I think you could benefit from having 2, 3, 4 people running that main XFL account on any given day. I know game days and stuff like that go crazy. Yeah, see, this would be cool, Haley. Live tweeting practices, that would be cool. Do a little. Is Periscope still a thing? Can we do Periscope? Remember, was that like didn't Twitter buy Periscope, or Periscope was Twitter's thing? But that, like, I like that because it was the conscious effort from the XFL for that. Last thing on Twitter, we got a couple more things here, but. We need to figure out what is the long-term plan for the XFL's Twitter handle. We cannot have it be XFL 2023 anymore. I believe at XFL Twitter is available. And this is a major issue when you have even DJ himself has done it. Tweeting the wrong handle. We're tweeting Xavier F. Lepage and getting him involved in this. I don't know if we can buy that, but it's a major issue because when you have people tweet it out and it's not going. Do you like XFL Twitter? Would you have a better idea?
Well, first of all, I'd like them to get back the original handle that they lost to Lepage or whoever that gentleman is that apparently just holds it over their heads and keeps.
But he must have gotten it first because Twitter didn't exist when when Vince's XFL came. So I think, technically, I think Lepage gets. He has first dibs on the XFL Twitter handle.
He does, but let's be real here. Is he really going to use it? No. So let's go. Let's start working on that one. That's my first mandate. Second of all, I think. 2023, you're going to keep changing the year, right? And as long as you don't do anything like XFL season 2, 3, like we talked about, we don't want that to happen. But I don't know, XFL Twitter just doesn't really vibe with me as far as you're just posting the same platform that you're already on anyways. I guess you could, but it doesn't, to me, that's not something that other companies do or a lot of other places kind of are in line with. I would rather that you just either have this year or again trying to find that old handle if you can be able to kind of commandeer and get that back. Those are my only two options. Other than that, there's not really much else I could think of that you could change the name or make it more appealing.
I also I liked when I tweeted that out a couple weeks ago. Like, hey Elon, while you're fixing Twitter, could we kind of nudge Lepage here? And I think people were, the USFL stands of the world, like, oh, you're trying to take away his civil rights, Reed. I'm like, just a suggestion. It would be fun. Max has your offer more in-depth coverage of incoming players and off-season events with Lewin or others. Why should fans have to wait to January to get to know the new rookies? I like that. And I think once we have the draft next week, we're going to have a slew of that. I had a couple players reach out to me already like, hey, can I come on? Or I'm in the rookie draft. Can I get involved? I said, well, we're kind of doing all the CFL stuff right now, and then we're going live. Like, maybe we can work with the league once you're brought in. But I don't know if we're bringing it back in Josh for that. I don't know what his schedule's like. But yeah, could we bundle together 5-10-minute player interviews a couple weeks, or pick, do 2 teams each podcast? So you do 4 podcasts and a couple players. What would you like to see following the rookie draft in terms of social content?
Yes, I would like to see more profiles done, and I would like to see them being done on each prospect, or at least somebody who's picked and has a great potential to be part of the league, and maybe using some of their college tape or using some of the just some background information on who they are as well. And I really want to see that kind of attention done from multiple people in the league. Maybe if you get Josh Lewin in, like you said, if he can come in and maybe they have him do his like one-on-one interviews via Zoom or Skype or whatever technology he uses, and try to get people to try and be more involved that way. I think if you have maybe more posting on YouTube again, you really utilize those YouTube highlights. That's another thing. Making sure that you have those little short snippets on the NFL graphic designs. I want to see if they have like some nice graphic layouts for all of these players as they're being drafted during the actual draft itself. But yeah, maybe if you can get an interview, or maybe sort of more just again a presentation on their profiles after the fact, that would really help people start to kind of get to know them and understand where they're from and why they're doing this, and maybe why they could be a potentially good fit for the league. I think that's not a bad idea at all, and maybe do that for a couple or 3 weeks out after the draft has concluded.
I also know that, Rick Saratella has been on here before. We did our Thanksgiving. I think it was like the post-draft kind of grading of the teams. I can't remember. And then Rick's obviously been on for the kickoffs and all that. But I don't know what the rookie draft is going to look like next week. Like I said, we're going to be, God willing, I have this wonderful lady that books me a year out to do these. Hey, Reed, I got, and it's paid. It's a good gig, but it's always like the worst days. Like there's always like Dorothy's friends getting married, or like, hey, do you want to go to Barbados? It's like, oh no, I got this dance performance I got to go do. But it's that Friday, so I hope that we can figure that out. But when it comes to that, I've talked with Rick, and Rick goes, it would be so great as opposed to just, and I know this takes a lot more time, but like, as opposed to just posting on Twitter, like, hey, we signed this guy. Get together a couple people they can talk about. And I don't know any of these people. And I'm the dummy. I just make the platform here and bring on Andy and all these smart people. But like, when you bring on like Evan, we bring on John Vogel, bring on Rick Saratella, you can come on, like, and we could build where there would be enough of you guys that would know all of these players, right? I could not believe when Evan was on 2 weeks ago, we were doing our XFL players that still deserve a shot to the NFL. The amount of knowledge that like Evan knows about all of these players. And, oh yeah, and this guy, and he played at this college, and he was, this for a cup of coffee, and then he went here and he went here. Like, you could get, as opposed to just posting the roughneck sign, round 2, whatever. And I'm not volunteering, I'm volunteering, but like, there's ways to do it where you just get a couple of guys that have tracked these players for the last 4 or 5 years. They could talk about how exciting that is. I know that's a step above all of this, but I think it could help give what I think is already going to get some good juice, just because it's a draft in June. And I don't think that the draft, there's, what are you doing? It's a pretty dead time for the NFL, but I think you could get more juice out of the rookie draft if you were able to get some people together that know about all this stuff.
Right. You have designated people who do their homework, and you've had people who do their homework on the show.
For free.
Yeah. Exactly. And I know you scream from a mountaintop about this, about saying, I'm here, I'll do this for free all day long. I get it. I understand it. There are so many people in this network who really do so much fantastic work and do their homework on these players, these coaches, these leagues, the sport, everything. Like, there's people who really put in the dedication. They need to go get people like that. Again, maybe there's orders from high on up from Mr. Redbird Capital.
I get it.
I get it.
I get it.
I get it too, but they've got to have, you have to have that kind of coverage. Look, I know they've been around forever and they have the capital to do it, and I understand, but the NFL has this down to a science, right? They have all the people who do this. And listen, is it media members who maybe do it on their own volition and aren't employed by the league? Yes, but those are also people who have jobs that are with other media outlets that allow them to do that. We don't have that, right? There are not designated media outlets who are giving opportunities and work to people who do this. This is all done by pure passion for people who really just care about these leagues. So when you don't have that from an outlet standpoint, when you know there aren't other people who are being paid to do this, I think it's your job to then bring those kinds of people in, because otherwise you're not going to get as much exposure as you would normally otherwise, until you start to convince people, hey, this is a viable thing that you could do for maybe not a living, but at least, in a sense of being recognized and compensated for your hard work, instead of it just being on your own free time, because that's essentially what it is right now for for most of these leagues.
What I don't get, and I haven't gotten this whole year with this, and there's certainly no love lost between Mark Perry and I over at News Hub, but we hear this reported, right? XFL and the marketing budget, and we were so low, we're really trying to conserve, and it's a startup and all this stuff. I would be not every, right. Sometimes Mark will write like salacious articles, but any article like your guys's, the team breakdowns and the roster previews and the looking forward to the weekend and the game recaps and the power rankings, I would be retweeting every one of those. Every one of those. You have people that are working that, like I said, I'm not talking me here. This is because I know we come on here and we talk the XFL failing on that. I'm talking like real media websites. This isn't Reed trying to plug, get the Markcast. Like, Mark, if Stefan's got a good one, if James, whoever over there, like if they're writing good stuff, like be retweeting all that stuff, because what I don't get is like, I'll see, the Seattle Times, like they went and wrote a story about, Danucci or whatever, like that'll get a share, but like Matt Lyons is, team breakdown, whatever, the Sea Dragons won't get. And I don't get that delineation there. I'm like, well, why can we retweet? Is it because it's the Seattle Times? Because I feel like the journalistic credibility, at least of News Hub, and I know you got to kind of vet and you got to figure out all your different stuff, but why you can't be utilizing some of this. I mean, all of like the amount of free content that is created about these leagues is astounding. And especially just good, like journalistic content. Like you're not even, I take the commentary out of it. Mike Mitchell, this is the DC Defenders preview coming up. They're taking on the Roughnecks. Here's the depth charts. Here's the injury reports. This is what we know, all that stuff. Like, retweet that out. Like, I just don't understand that. Like, I get, okay, we don't want to tweet out, is the XFL bankrupt? Like, they're laying off everyone. Like, I get that. But I think that there's a line there, and I would just utilize more of that free content that we have.
Or just like, I guess in a way, like with News Hub, also maybe one of the things, the advantages that the NFL has is the network, right? NFL Network, a thing that has all these people and these personnel that kind of talk about all these things on a regular basis. They have just content that's being generated all the time just by this one entity, right? The NFL account could just retweet like, oh, this is Adam ranks like, I don't know, player rankings.
And it's like, not like, we're not like, this is not, yes, but you can retweet that out and be like, this is not necessarily what do people put on there? Like, retweets do not equate endorsements or whatever it is. Like, it's okay to share stuff that other people are creating, that as long as it's not like F-bombs and stuff.
Exactly. Just, I mean, you curate as far as like, okay, let's see, what is this? All right. Is this going to be, in line with, is it just going to get people talking, but not talking in the way that we don't want them to talk about? That's the kind of thing that you have to be careful about. But you're right. That content is just being generated all the time. I mean, Mike Mitchell's putting out his power rankings left and right. And I mean, he's doing it for multiple leagues. And that's another thing, like the CFL doesn't do that as much either, which also just drives me crazy, because it's like there's people all over the place who are making this stuff constantly, and they're not even taking advantage of that. And they've been around much longer. So you have to be able to Like, you have to be able to gravitate to that stuff because this stuff is being done for you for free. Take advantage of it.
And like I said, I get that there's like and we have media, because I've talked a little bit about the CFL. Like Darren Bauman came on, and Darren does his Winnipeg sports show, and he's talked to me about this, and he's like, like, because there's like, they have media partners like the CFL. I'm like, okay, they don't want to do. I'm like, I get that, but it's also like it's Twitter. I think Mike puts out 5 articles a week during the XFL season, like, talking through, the preview and the breakdown and the recap and the power rankings, Pat stuff. I just don't get, like, we have Josh, and Josh does his stuff, and I think that that's a tremendous product. They had like another writer that was kind of doing some recaps or like a press releasey kind of stuff, but I don't know. I don't think you need to have someone on salary for all of that if we're trying to cut costs. We have it here announcing the TV schedule earlier, selling tickets earlier. I think that's great. I don't want to go too early, because we now in the CFL have a world where they announced the CFL schedule last, like the second the Grey Cup was over. They're like, here's our schedule. And then we had all this free agency movement in the offseason. And now you look at the schedule, and not all of the teams are playing. Like, quarterbacks have traded and they're not playing their old team, or they're moved cities and they're not going back to their old city. So I think there's a point to do that. Max wants to see it kind of maybe around combine time, end of July. When would you like to see the travel schedule?
Oh man, yeah, you guys brought that up.
Or TV schedule, TV schedule.
You guys brought that up on the stream last night, and it really got me to thinking. I would at least like to see it again sometime in the fall. That would be nice. Maybe September. That would be preferable if you could get that organized. I mean, at least try to plan it. Look, these venues all are going to make plans, and you have to start scheduling this out. It really depends on how long you've been in that venue, and obviously your footholding as far as what kind of priority do you get with those events. Now, since none of those venues are obviously owned by the league or by the individual teams, they don't have as much positioning or power. Case in point, so like what earlier this year or last week, I saw that my team, the Oregon Ducks, are actually playing in the Super Regional this weekend in NCAA baseball. Well, they share the stadium with a minor league baseball team.
I hope that's the XFL calling you for a writing job.
I think they are. I think I'm on the hotline right now, actually, they're asking for my ideas. I know.
It's fine.
But no. So one of the things that I noticed with their scheduling, though, is because they got a super regional hosting this weekend, which is great. Like that never happens. Like that's happened twice, and since they came back out of not existing. But the problem is that the minor league baseball team that they share the stadium with now has nowhere to play, because they get priority for their series, the Oregon baseball team, because they own the stadium. The university owns the stadium. So the other team, the minor league team, has to go play in Washington now because they have no other stadium to play in the state of Oregon. Like there's no other place to go for them to go play. They had to go all the way to Washington to play their series. So when you don't have that priority, it's hard to make the schedule. I get that. That being said, the XFL has to be able to at least get in line with these venues and say like, hey, look, this is what we're looking at. Let us know what are these dates way far in advance, because they're going to schedule concerts. They're going to schedule, ceremony events. They're going to schedule other sports. They're going to do all those kinds of things. You have to be able to get out in front of this, because they're just going to fill up the schedule. You really have to be on the ball about that. So yes, I would prefer if we could get maybe the schedule out in September. That'd be awesome. But maybe that's just wishful thinking.
We're talking here TV schedules and network slots and all of that stuff. I want to talk about our idea of either a rolling bye week kind of around March Madness, or kind of the midseason bye. But before we get to that, really, Max is talking here. We need to get better time slots, better networks, right? Obviously, we want that. What really struck me, and I just, we've done all this, and we get caught in the minutia every week of these USFL ratings and all this stuff. And here we pounded all season. If you're an XFL fan, like we want better, we need to be on ABC, we need to be on better time slots and kind of all that stuff. USFL this year did that, right? Last year they were, hey, we're Friday on Peacock, and we're Sunday night on whatever it was, FS1 or all that stuff. They're on far more network windows this year, and their ratings are actually down. I mean, compared to last year, but also compared on game average to the XFL. I believe it's not even close. They don't. I'm sure, Mike, I can pull up the numbers. That's not the debate today. But the point is, simply getting on better networks isn't like, oh, this is a golden bullet. Like if we just get on ABC every night at 8:00, like it's going to be better. yeah, that's going to help. What do you want to see in terms of the actual realistic positionings? Because the XFL, we're not going to be ABC, 8 o'clock every Saturday, Sunday night. So what would you like to see for that? And I do want to talk about the bye weeks.
They need to increase the number of ABC games for sure. What were they last past season? 7? That was
I
the
think
number.
7.
The 7. Make it 13 if you can. Maybe double that. 14. Can you get that number up? That would be great. There are going to be a lot of games on ESPN. I understand that. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Get as many games off of ESPN2 as you can. Just try to get it on the main network as much as possible. The FX thing, it's cool, but I don't think it's going to be the long-term answer. Maybe have 1 or 2 games on FX, but don't have so many like USA Network with USFL. You need to get those games off that, and you need to be able to have them in consistent time slots. Again, with the scheduling with ESPN in the spring, just try to finagle it around other events, but keep it at least to a point where I think if you have Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening, and then Sunday morning and Sunday early afternoon, I think that's really ideal. I think those are the best time slots, and those are the ones that seem to draw the most attention and are maybe the most accommodable for people as well as far as their schedules goes, because it's the weekend. You don't have to worry about traveling during game day or some of that nature. Now, I did travel on a Sunday for the Arlington game, the Arlington and San Antonio game I went to. That was on a Sunday afternoon, and I flew back that night, but it wasn't so bad. I was fine with that. So I think you have to be cognizant of these people's lives and what's going on in their lives. Now, if you get the local market involved, you get the people and the kids involved and the families involved, that's great. And again, I think those time slots, those earlier time slots are great. Just, you can't have the 7 o'clock West Coast times. Like, that just cannot happen. That's killer. That's like Pac-12 football. It's just, you cannot have those.
Well, it's super regional then. Yeah, you're not hitting the national market at that point.
They have, your Dragons have to not be basically the doormat for the scheduling this time, because they got absolutely hosed this past season. They cannot have that happen again, because it was very inconsistent, and it was all over the map, and it was just poor times. Honestly, it was just really, really poor times. I mean, that Thursday night against Houston, that should have been a big deal, but it was during March Madness. It was March Madness, and it was a late start, and it was like, no one's going to watch this. I'm sorry. This is really just horrendous timing on this. The March schedule, like I said, this goes back to what I was saying about hopefully putting in the bye week, which I'll get into in a minute if it's going to transition there. But like, that would actually help you try to create a schedule around March, because March Madness is going to be there prevalently no matter what. So maybe just focus more of your programming in late February and April. If you can get the little bit of bye week action going in March, maybe that way, then you don't have to worry about as many games and where they go and their time slots.
Something interesting as well, and Luis brought this up, and we'll get to the bye weeks. And Max and I have talked about this. This writer's strike right now is really interesting, and obviously, I am in full support of the writers as someone that's grown up in arts and brought content creation, all of that, and them wanting to get paid more, and them wanting to get, like, we don't want AI people. Not even so much like it. I think it gets misinformed. Not even so much like writing scripts, right? Like, obviously, we're not going to have like AI, at least right now, write an episode of Parks and Rec or whatever. But, even just doing translated closed captioning or like dub overs for TV shows and movies and stuff, like, that's a job that now the AI can just spit that out. There used to, there's people that sit there and like, do the overdubs or do the translations, kind of all that stuff, protecting all that stuff. But not having writers now means, and I remember the time back in, I think it was 2009, after the last writer's strike, when we had a lot of sports and we had a lot of really bad TV shows. We had Opposite Worlds, where two different sets of people, one lived in like caveman times and one lived in future times, and they were separated by a glass wall. I don't know if you remember that. And then there was Who Done It, that was like a murder mystery, and we had this guy named Giles that was the host that would like scream at the people and they would get killed, and it was very fascinating. But I think that sports and reality is going to be big time here coming into the fall, going into the winter, depending on how long this lasts, because like the machine has to catch up, right? What are your thoughts on the writer's strike affecting XFL next year?
Can I give you a conspiracy theory?
Yeah.
I think it's a methodology from Hollywood to not have to get into the business of greenlighting different ideas, and they want to cut that from their time budget schedule. So I think that's really what it's about. They just don't want to deal with, okay, well, I have to argue about this idea and this thing and this. So it's like, no, I'm just going to give it to AI and I'm just going to approve it. And I don't have to think about, I don't have to negotiate creative creative differences with an AI bot, right? That's something that I'm sure a lot of those execs were like, well, this just saves me a lot of time. Why not just do this? And money, of course. That's what it always comes down to, right? Cutting corners. And so, yeah, it is, but it is a good point, and it's something that people have to stand for and be able to say, hey, no, I'm not willing to put up with this. This sucks. Like, I don't want to get you in this content because it's it's a lot of words that I can't say here on air, but like there's a lot of things to it that don't. It's very inhuman and it's inhumane in a lot of ways because it's not something that appreciates what people have done before this and what people are doing now in terms of like creating content. It entertains us, and is that something that like really, especially our country, is all about is being entertained, is just being involved with people's lives and being involved in content that really engages us. That's I think it's a mistake to try and think that could just be immediately replaced by AI technology right now. It's not sufficient enough, and I don't know if it ever will be because there doesn't have that human element to it. Can you simulate humanity? Like that's the thing I wonder about. I know that's really deep, like logistical stuff that doesn't really mesh with our audience, but like that's just kind of stuff I think about with the Writers Guild stuff. But yeah, with in terms of like creating content for the XFL, if you're going to tie it back to that, yeah, like do you want an AI bot to write player 54? You tell me. If send that in the chat, make that a voting poll.
That has a good comment here. George R. Martin has been on the writer's strike since 2011. I appreciate that. That was good. We have a comment here. Act My Age. I'll pull it up at the end. I'm saving viewer comments. We'll throw up all that stuff. So Act My Age. I got yours there. In terms of I do think sports high profile here. Max pointed out the actors are on strike. And it's like all in support. We're all in support of all that stuff. The rolling by. So we're either team just midweek hard or mid-season hard stop or team mid-season rolling by. So I don't think unless we're going to do a real media week, which we did not do, the week by between the championship and the playoff game, I understand we want to accommodate people traveling. I don't think that's beneficial. Andy is the team. Hey, you take those first 3 weeks of March, take 2 teams off. They get rolling by one each week. That way there's only, 3 games we have to schedule. So I guess it would be 4 weeks, right? We do 4 weeks. We go rolling by all through March. I say just at least hard stop the first week of March. Take it off. It's midwinter break, and then we come back and we do it. Give your pitch here for the mid-season rolling by.
Well, again, I think it's not only integral for rest for the players because I know I get spring is not a long season, but it's still long enough that there's still attrition involved with these players and these teams, right? And you want to have time to be able to account for different things that happen. Again, can you have a week 4, 5, 6, 7, where 2 teams take a bye every week, and then that way they have time to kind of reevaluate, maybe do some player signings as well, maybe go out and get some player signings, get people more integrated. Like, again, what happened if Arlington made that trade for Luis earlier in the season and then they said, hey, we're going to do it before our bye week. We get him in here. We start kind of reaccommodating ourselves. And then maybe their season actually turns around even faster than it did last year. Or you get a team like maybe just get Orlando to kind of settle down and be like, okay, what is going on here? What's happening with Dormady? What's happening with our quarterbacks? What's happening? Terrell Buckley is not trying to, run around with his hair on fire for 1 week and he's trying to figure out what's going on. Like maybe just that way you sort of calm the waters a little bit for your team. And again, it's integral rest. It's kind of reevaluating. It's sort of stepping back and seeing what's working, what's not. That to me, from a strategy standpoint and from a player safety standpoint, I think makes a lot of sense. But again, for the TV schedule, it also makes sense because again, if you do it in that month of March, now it's like, okay, you just have to worry about scheduling 3 games around March Madness. We don't have to worry about this. And again, March Madness, I mean, there's 2 weekends that are 4 days, right? There's the first 2 weeks are Thursday through Sunday. So if you want, maybe you can experiment with having a Thursday game again, but not during those first 2 weeks. Maybe the 3rd week, maybe at the very end of March when there's only I think it's the elite, the Final Four, like the Final Four itself, which actually kind of goes more into April. But my point being is that now you can, if you want to put a game on Thursday, it's not a detriment to your ratings like it was with Houston and Seattle. So that's my pitch for it. So it's player safety, it's strategy, and it's TV ratings. Those are the 3 reasons why I would want to have that adjusted schedule and the bye weeks, the rolling bye weeks.
You have a lot of people on here that want the rolling bye week. Here's my idea, and this is I just thought about this. I kind of chuckled here. Sometimes if you watch, like you can just see me start to grab I think of dumb stuff to talk about. What if we do like we take kind of the best element of fan control football, right? So we're drafting the teams every week. What if we do? I'm a Survivor fan. What if we do the mid-season bye week and we do a tribe swap and we do no. No,
So what do you mean by tribe swap?
We do a team. We redraft the teams. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. That was just a read show.
Do you want to flip the field too? You want to do that?
Flip the field. We get a fifth down. We get all that stuff on here. I have looked at this. We're very off pace to get done with this in reasonable time. We'll do our best. Andy and I petitioned about 2 hours here, so I think we'll try to hit at least that. But this is a lot of stuff here. Last thing on this, and then we're going to get to local marketing because this is all kind of national stuff. Connect with local sports media everywhere, even without XFL teams. Try to get either on the radio, on TV, connect with people because I know people in Seattle that don't know that the XFL Sea Dragons exist. So we're going to get to that. But how do we get the national? How do we get that national spotlight more?
Again, I mean, it's not just TV times. I mean, the TV schedule does help because I know people started to kind of warm up to it once they started to notice games were on TV. But I see Haley
doesn't like
not with Survivor. She doesn't watch Survivor, I guess, or she's watched too much Survivor.
I tell you, the tribes one. That's a rating thing. You go, hey, XFL, they're coming in here. Hey, FCF did it every week. It was, and you could then the second season, you could save certain players. So you could be like, well, we're not, but they would just change O-lines. They would just go this O-lines is set, and we're going to send it to the Glacier Boys, and then their D-line's going to come. It was at least an event every week. I'm sorry. FCF season 1 was top notch.
Yeah. I wonder, do the CFL fans know that FCFs exist? Because I want to know what they would would they faint if they knew that there was a league that had 5 downs. They think if they think 3 to 4 is a radical idea, wait till they get a load of them. But I just So as far as getting more exposure though for the games, I mean again, there's not that overall presence of what's going on even in the markets themselves, right? So I wrote down a couple of things. First of all, you need to have more community events. You need to be able to get people out and be able to do more meet and greets, more maybe raffles or little events of hey, we're having this thing going on. Here's an offer, a package you could win for winning in this game. Do more local promoting. I know it's super old school, but radio or TV, local marketing. I saw ads for the San Diego IFL team last year, the San Diego Fleet. The Fleet. Oh my God!
Wow,
the Strike Force. That's how much I care about the Strike Force. If that shows you. No, but my Fleet love dies hard. It really does. But for the Strike Force, they got all of this local marketing, and they have TV ads. I've seen post game shows and pre game shows for them, and I just didn't really see that with the XFL markets. Again, I wasn't in those specific markets, but from what I was seeing from the periphery of all of you being involved in those markets, I didn't see that as much. So more community events. That's one that I wrote down. Another thing, I wanted to see more banners. That's another thing. Can you get more billboards? Let me tell you, since the MLS team got announced down here, I'm seeing banners left and right for that thing. I'm seeing billboard announcements. It's gotten around town. The word that website was posted, checking in information. They already had a fan event for the team. I want to say a day after it was announced that the team was coming in. And so you need more stuff like that. You need to say, hey, look, especially the XFL has to take advantage of this, right? They're actually in the cities. They have to take advantage of that because otherwise if people don't know you're there or aren't made aware of they're not going to show up. And they have to put more emphasis on that. So just more banners, more community events, and more meet and greets and local TV spots. Those are the things that I really look at.
Yeah. Well, so we'll do that as well. Local stuff. I'm talking if I'm living in Boise, Idaho, And the CFL they've championed this as well. Like, hey, now we're on CBS Sports Network. It's like they're going to promote more of this, and it really is like Jim Nantz talked about it during the Masters or whatever the golf thing was, and then they've had some like little local banners and stuff. I just don't know. We have to convert more of those fans unless you're living in those markets. I will say, can we get? I know we've long championed Dwayne the Rock Johnson's social media prowess on here. Could we get Messi to tweet about since he went to the Miami team? I've read this that they now that Miami Inter FC team has more Instagram followers than any like MLB, NHL, NFL, any MLS. Like they have. I mean. Can we get Messi kind of tweet about this? Can we get him talking about? I don't care about the Rock tweet. I want Messi doing that. Also, in terms of Under Armour, I think there were like things this year in supply chain stuff. We got to get that because the most frustrating thing is seeing coaches and people wear cool Under Armour stuff on the sidelines and not being able to purchase that. I think there were issues with that, but obviously we need to work on that.
Oh, the jerseys. Oh,
just like quarter zip, nice sweatshirts, kind of all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea of the designs, but as far as the execution, I think it left much to be desired. And there's a lot more where that could have been presented. And also, again, just like getting it sold in the stadiums didn't seem to be very consistent. And trying to find it was also difficult. Like at the championship game, I mean, I saw jerseys for sale, but they were kind of like tucked away in a corner somewhere in like one end of the stadium that you had to like find specifically if you wanted to go buy one. And Arlington, I don't really remember seeing much gear around. Maybe I didn't look hard enough, but I walked around the stadium on the lower concourse level, and I didn't see much there either. So they need to be able to present that a little bit more forwardly, because you're not going to have a team store, right? You're not going to have that at this point, but at least try to find a way to like get that gear out of that merch out in a more present fashion and be able to have it right there. Because there's like lower level leagues are, or at least other leagues that I've been to that don't have as much camaraderie or as much fanfare that do a better job of getting their products out or at least presenting their gear, right? Like there's a way there. I've been to places where I'm like, oh, they're selling a scarf, or they're selling this jersey, or they're selling this shirt, or they're selling that. Like there's always something that I'll see where somebody's presenting their products more forwardly than some of these bigger leagues, like the XFL, for example. They need to just put it out there more.
Is this shirt? I didn't even mean to put this. Oh, I just put this on because I need something to wear today. Is this shirt better than like any of the generic XFL? Like, I think generic XFL 2020 is still better than generic XFL 2023 in terms of like just the Seattle with like the whatever the X.
The two arrows. Yeah, that's. I think as far as athletic gears goes, like I actually like my sweatshirt, my XFL sweatshirt. I actually train in it sometimes like that. But see, here's the thing though. They need to be careful about like what market are you appealing to? Are you appealing to the people who like are like the athletic market where people are like training all the time? Or are you appealing to the fans? And I feel like sometimes it's more the people who are like going to the gym as opposed to, not that our fans don't go to the gym, but saying like people who are like gym lifers and people who only focus on like their fitness as opposed to people who are engaged in the product and engaged in the lifestyle and talking about the sport. I feel like there's less of that. The XFL 2020 was very much about that. That was all they cared about. This one's kind of more, a little bit more trying to appeal to both markets. And I think it's more appealing to one side than the other. So that, in my opinion, yeah, the Seattle one that you're wearing, like, for example, is just, again, it pops. It's more vibrant. It's noticeable, especially like that logo is going to be hard for them to erase from people's minds because I think it really was in a lot of ways iconic and it was colorful and it stood for a lot of things. Not saying that theirs doesn't right now, but it stands for something different than what people had from their vision 3 years ago.
Anything else? I want to talk here local, kind of getting some of these events we want to see in the fall, like tangible stuff here. Anything else attracting? Because I still don't think we've cracked this code of like, if you don't live in one of the 8, because we were going to stop down here. If you live in San Antonio, but if I live in Nebraska, what are we doing to reach me? Is it just because I do feel like I have complimented many times. I think XFL Twitter, for what they've had this year, I think they've done a tremendous job, right? And then they've been getting onto TikTok and Instagram and everything else. But if I'm not on Twitter following XFL or The Rock, like I don't know how I learned about this. So how do we get Joe in Nebraska to figure out about the league this year?
Besides TV exposure, I think you have to appeal to maybe certain players that are from that area. And I know now as far as like those players playing in the actual markets, I don't think that really does a lot of things. Like, last I checked, Brady White came from Memphis and he plays for the Memphis Showboats. Okay, cool. That's not really something that appeals to me. But as far as like maybe taking players from other places and then them coming into your league, maybe you appeal more to that, right? Like, what if someone like, speaking of Nebraska, what if someone like Taylor Martinez showed up in the league and somebody who Nebraska fans are very familiar with? Maybe then you can start to appeal to them like, hey, you remember this guy? He's going to start playing for this team. I remember yesterday I was watching the BC game. I saw an Oregon Duck jersey or sweatshirt in the crowd, in the Calgary crowd. And it's very vibrant. Like it's a bright green and a sea of red. So it's like it's the easiest thing to notice. But like I'm pretty certain that's because Vernon Adams plays for BC, right? Like he's a Duck alumni and Eastern Washington alumni, of course. But like the Duck fans, including me, remember him very fondly. So that's something that you can appeal to, saying like, hey, do you remember this guy? He was pretty, you can really start to appeal to players that came from certain colleges. Maybe that's something that you could talk about, or players that are from that, maybe a really renowned high school area, maybe in Texas, for example. I think that's something that they have to appeal to as well. Other than that, I mean, if you don't have a team, it's the same thing you ask yourself with the NFL. It's like, well, the NFL has fans everywhere, even if there's states that don't have fans. So how do you get them to maybe choose a team?
Do you think and I don't know if they are or not, do you think the USFL is doing a better job attracting a national market? Or because I don't know. I don't know if that Fox, like, it just feels more familiar, right? Like, oh, like, what is this? Oh, it's football. Like, I don't know. And maybe just the way their product looks and kind of sounds, because it does feel like, I go back and forth. Like, how much can the casual viewer really tell the difference between the XFL and the USFL? But when you watch especially the Fox ones, when you watch the Fox broadcast, like, you know exactly what this feels like.
I mean, there is a level of familiarity with it, certainly with the broadcast presentation. But as far as like the teams, I mean, they clearly are cornering the market on the Midwest, like, and the Upper East Coast. That's their strategy. So for me, I mean, there's kind of disassociation with that as far as there's no West Coast teams. So that does add into it. But as far as the presentation goes, yeah, I mean, it's something that a fan could immediately recognize, or the NBC broadcast too. It's something that most casual NFL fans could immediately recognize. It's just a matter of, well, I don't really know these markets very well, like Ken or Memphis, or some of these other markets that people are not as in tune with. But also, again, not seeing them play in their markets too, because then people are starting to wonder, like, wait, where are they right now? Okay, they're the hub, but like, but then we had an interaction we witnessed from a person that was trying to watch the New Orleans Breakers from New Orleans, and let's just say his curiosity was not met with the kindest gestures. Because he was trying to figure out, why is there a New Orleans team that's not playing in New Orleans? You're going to have those questions from people. I'm sorry, like, you're going to have to deal with that. Why the teams are not playing in their home markets? You're going to hear it over and over again.
It's a weird USFL, and I don't. You can please correct me, and I don't want to be the XFL like stand here. There's a level. Certainly, the CFL has its level of gatekeeping, right? Of we've been around forever. We feel like the NFL's little brother in Canada, and I say, having spoken to Canadians, is recently, as 2 weeks ago with John Hodge, they have an inferiority complex. I mean, that is John Hodge's words. When it comes to this, we feel very protective of that. The USFL has a kind of a similar, where it's like, yeah, we know we're in the hub, leave us alone. Like, it's a similar like thing, and it's really where I've never, and tweet at me, like, I've never seen an XFL fan like, well, you're just a big idiot. You don't realize, like, and maybe there are, and and I know some people get a little passionate. It feels like it's a different level of gatekeeping on there, at least with the USFL and the XFL, because it is I firmly believe it's in the USFL inferiority complex. A lot of the interactions they have, both with XFL and with other fans.
I think it's just a little level of hostility that is really unnecessary, and I see it from just a little bit. Like, hey, look, you get it. Here's the deal. Every league is going to have things that they are not going to be able to do, and things that they want to do better. And I think it's still a channeling from fans, if I'm going to be honest, if you're talking about inferiority complexes, of what maybe the higher ups are not understanding. Like, it's like, it's so funny how like tribal people can be with like their likes and dislikes, and yet I think in some ways maybe it's already channeling some of their own frustrations from what's not happening at the higher levels of, okay, well, I've complained about this a lot of times, but they don't get it, so that's never going to change. And maybe it's that, but you can't just attack people who are like don't know about this, because that's not how it works. You just can't. uh, I've been learning the CFL game the last 3 years, and now I finally get to a point where I'm feeling comfortable talking about it and really starting to understand it a little bit better, because at least you've done a good job of getting people involved that
But you
understand
have
it
to
and
do
explain
work.
it.
You
You
shouldn't
have to
have.
do
I
the
shouldn't
work.
have to do work to watch it. Like, I'm a Washington Commanders fan. I've never been to a Washington Commanders football game ever in my life. I don't have anyone on there like, well, why are you tweeting about like? I'm a fan of the team. I enjoy. You shouldn't have. I shouldn't have to do homework to be a fan of. Like, I should be able to enjoy it if I like it.
I mean, listen, I had to start somewhere too. Like, should I have been spending 7 hours a day watching NFL Network when I was 14? Probably not. But I did that because that was on my own volition, and I was curious. I wanted to know something. There wasn't some like NFL fan, coming after me being like, "Oh, why are you want to be a Chargers fan?" or what do you want to learn about our league? No one did that. Like that wasn't a thing, right? There's no gatekeeping there. Maybe there would be in like certain message boards, but like that wasn't a thing in my life. I just became part of the league, and that was it. No problem. The transaction's done. Like I don't that's just what baffles me about these leagues, especially players or people who I feel like they have this thing that they really care about, but it's almost like they don't want it to change sometimes. They don't want it to be different, because then if other people get involved, then too many cooks in the kitchen. I get it, but at the same time, it's like if you want your league or your thing to survive, you need to be able to adapt and change, and you need to understand that. And that's what we talk about all day long on this show every day.
It's like I remember back when like the Ataris, when they were like they were like SoCal, right? SoCal punk band. Then they had So Long Astoria came out, and then they were like the sellouts, and everyone wanted to know about them. And then they were at Warped Tour, and people were chanting like, "You sold out." The guy like literally exposed himself on the stage. It was quite the scene. It was quite the scene of the Warped Tour. But yeah, like you hold this precious. I remember that like even when Fantasy Football was coming out, like I think Paul and I felt like we really had that market like kind of covered, right? We had like Patrick Dees on the show and stuff. And then, yeah, they start going and they're ramping up through promotion. They kind of like, you get a lot more people kind of involved in it. And it is this weird, like, well, how do we balance this thing that maybe we believe in? But I don't know. I think XFL fans just kind of want it to succeed.
I think in general they do. I think it's more of just they want it to grow and they want it to get better. They're more open to change, because it's kind of like a startup in a lot of ways, right? It feels more like a startup. The USFL doesn't feel like a startup. It just feels like, resting on its laurels, and it has kind of an old brand that it sort of keeps itself in line with. But as far as the XFL goes, I think there's more responses and opens to change, with the rules or with, moving teams around, and with being in different markets and different social media presence. I think there's more willingness to change, because ultimately the ultimate goal is survival, because they know that survival has not been a thing for a lot of these leagues, and it has not gone well in that regard. Whereas the CFL, I mean, they know they've survived, they've been around forever, and change is scary because it might mean their survival is cut short. But I personally think that there are things that they can work on that aren't going to completely cripple their entire fan base. I do think there are adjustments that could be made along the way.
Last comment here, and then we got a little bullet points to get through. Jonathan Lewis was talking. I put this up before. I want to make sure we stop down this. He trains in his XFL shirt as well. Perfect for the 12-ounce curls, if you know what he's talking about. Drinking beer. When I studied abroad in Italy, I did like a month-long video project over there, and this guy named Seven, mountain of a man, owned the local bar in town. I think he was Seven because he was like the seventh child or whatever. Like, but he was like Italian for seven. We call him Seven. He was this mountain of a man, and we're like, Seven, like, what's the deal? He goes, well, I used to be a weightlifter, and I would lift weights every day. He goes, then I bought this bar, and now I drink beers every day. So similar vibes with John Lewis and Seven on there. We're talking local marketing. Max has here, fall draft parties in the local markets. engage XFL staff more closely in local media and sports media. Get out to as many high school and college football games as possible. Give out T-shirts and kind of all that stuff, especially Texas and Florida. I would also say on that, I know they were doing that with the Kraken last year. We have kind of year-round sports now in Seattle, but get out to that, get out to the Seahawks games. I think we'll see more of that now, right? That we have some people and staff. Again, that's why I don't want to see too much ramp up or ramp down. My last point, and obviously toss you, when I did the Seattle event show, this would have been in 2019. I was there showcasing, hey, I'm a videographer. We do weddings and events and kind of all that stuff. Even things like that, the XFL had a presence at in terms of, do you want to find out about season tickets? You want to find out this stuff? Like anywhere where like, hey, a bunch of people are coming to this. Hey, the Home and Garden show, right? Or we got these trade shows, anything. That's an expense. I mean, you're paying to be involved in that, but I think, even standing outside in front of the Kraken game, trying to do that, but figure out, Kraken starts in preseason since September. I mean, you got a long roll up there.
And tabling events too, right? Just like being able to go to like tabling events and be able to get your name out. Like there has to be a way that they can find avenues where they can appeal or like push out more of their content and more of their stuff. I mean, I've gone to events where people are trying to get, just to get their name out or get the word out. I remember when the Fleet existed, they had a partnership with some of the players. There's a fitness center. It's called Orange Theory, and they have like a bunch of different places across different regions, and there's a lot in San Diego County. And they had like some sort of partnership with some of the players from the Fleet for them to come and like, hey, you can come in and like train for free and come in and hang out at Orange Theory. And like, there's like, oh, there's like a football player here. Wait, you do what for a living? Oh, you play for this team. Oh, we have a team now. Okay. So like,
I like that.
that was cool. That was cool. I was like, oh, that's nice. I mean, I got a promotion through actually my mom got a promotion for them to get sideline tickets, like sideline access to one of the games. It was against Birmingham Iron. It was against Luis Perez. And we got to see like the sideline action. I watched Terrell Thomas and a couple other players practicing before the game. And so, yeah, like, again, this other league that quite frankly was very poor on promoting its own product until like the last minute and had all of its priorities maybe in the wrong spots, still had a level of notoriety and exposure that got people involved, even with how mediocre the presentation was sometimes, and got people to go to the game. So yes, the XFL can do this. They just have to be willing to do it and put it into the certain right spots that, like you said, where the people are, where there's people that would be engaged in that product, because people will care if you show that you care.
A couple of notes here, and we'll get thoughts on this. Talking, giving out the T-shirts and all that. It's hard because we're ramping up, ramping down. So you need to have enough kind of, keep one or two people in each of these markets selling stuff, can educate people, all that stuff. He says any significant local event where there's an opportunity to market, be at it. And every market have some sort of fan event at least every 3 weeks during the fall season. It's really tough. USFL benefits, one of, I think, the rare benefits of the later start time is we have some breathing room after the NFL. NFL is all encompassing there. The last thing here is find ways to make players and coaches more accessible to fans during the offseason and during camp. If local mini camps are happening, make fans aware of it and make it accessible to them. I will say anything, if I could channel, Danny, Redbird, anybody here, anything that you think people don't care about this, they absolutely do. These showcases you have coming up. And I understand like the Arizona one, we went, it was in like the bubble dome kind of thing in Arizona. So that might not be conducive to doing that, but like just put up a barrier 50 yards out. Let people stand there and take like anything you think that they don't. The combine, I get we got a staff, we got to deal with all that stuff, but fans absolutely, like, you are in the most diehard of anything fan bases here of people that are watching this stupid spring football here, talking Battlehawks or whatever, like anything that you're doing, people absolutely want to be there for it. It's the same with this rookie draft next week. Like I kind of thought we would get an email today at some point about this is happening next week. This is how you can watch or follow along, or this is what's going on. Any thoughts on any of those points?
No, fans absolutely do care. I 100% agree. I mean, again, like there was a fan event for the MLS team that was announced here, and we don't even know what the team colors, the team name is. Like we don't know the players, we don't coach, we don't know anything. All we know is where they're playing, and we know the owner. That's it. And yet people already showed up and they're showing you this event, and they're running around, they're throwing their hands up and all that, and it's like that. That shows that people care, and I think that you can get that engagement if you are willing to put in the work to do it, and just putting out anything for people to gravitate towards. But I don't know, put up a cardboard cutout of Dwayne in front of the stadium. I don't care. Like just something that like get people. I mean, people lost their minds when Dwayne showed up at the championship game. People were flipping out because he's doing the flex cam. People thought that was great. Like anything to appeal to the fan. Like the people care about that stuff. You have to understand that. I think yes, you want to build your fan base and you want to be able to build it and cultivate it, but like you have to also recognize that there are people like us who are here from the beginning. There are people who were there before that started and really got themselves involved in this from the outset, that really care about the success of the league, the success of the players and the coaches. Build on that. Focus on that. You have to understand that. And hopefully that messaging comes across a little bit better in the next season and the seasons going forward.
This is interesting here. We're talking about Danny Garcia. I think this is a good note. I will say that Danny posted her like, I can't do this job from an office. Like I'm going to be on the field, which I thought was a tremendous Instagram video. It was like the real, and she like broke through the wall, and then her husband sitting there. Like I thought that was great. Like every single shot of her at the championship game, I'm like barely out of frame because I was there. Like we did the media scrum and all that. Like they're showing all these kind of. I'm like, I was right. I was so close to being like, I would have died if I would have had half my face in that. But it says here, communicate with fans and local residents better. Offer a clear and obvious voice for the league and each team that speaks consistently with no distractions. Danny is great, but Danny doesn't have time to do what Oliver Luck did for the PR and back in 2020. Without this, it's difficult for people to keep up with what, if they aren't dedicated. We don't have like presidents of team operations anymore, right? Like we don't have the Ryan Gustafsons of the world that are like doing our Seattle check-ins. I thought Russ Brandon was going to kind of be this role. I like Russ a lot. He did that, but maybe his schedule, whatever, doesn't. But do you agree with that? Like we need to have, I love Danny as the owner and the visionary, but we got to have someone Danny Light that's doing stuff every day.
I agree 100%. You need to have somebody who's your cheerleader. And I mean, well, The Rock is a cheerleader, but he's not going to be able to do all the promoting and all the, like you got to get people on like Radio Row, right? You need to get Luck, at least, was showing up on shows left and right. He showed up on Coward. He shows up on all these different outlets of like explaining what they're doing and what the purpose is. And I think maybe you can get somebody who's a little bit more nuanced in terms of not just using the same bullet points that Danny and Dwayne use every single time, and maybe have a little bit more fluidity to how you present that message. It's not going to be Russ Brandon. I think Russ Brandon likes to be a little bit more behind the scenes. And so can you get somebody else who can communicate that, who's at least in a high position of power? If Danny and The Rock and Russ are not going to do it, or do it in a way that's more consistent, get somebody else to do it. You need that, because that way then people are more exposed to it. And again, seeing Oliver Luck drinking with the beer snake in 2020 was great, because people had already seen this man present the league and be involved with the league and really be involved with it with the fans. And that was something that people could really connect to. You need to have more of that. And I think if you're going to do that, then at least get somebody who's going to be able to put in the work in presenting that idea and that product. I mean, I know someone like in UFC, Dana White, say what you want about him. He gets out there and he brings his product all the time. He is very vocal about it all the time, constantly. He's everywhere. And you need people like that if you're going to try and build up your entity and your product.
And it's not that I don't want Danny and The Rock to do it. I understand that we have 1,800 different things we're trying to operate. It does, The Rock, I'm off doing Hobbs now, and I've got Moana, and we're doing the XFL, we've talked about this. It can't be a seasonal business, and you can't, The Rock. Okay, I'm, April, whatever. Like I'm off now, and I'll see you in December. Like we'll be back on the clock. And I know he had his tweet this week about like the health and safety and, promoting that and kind of all the good work that they did. But you have to, I don't know what that is. It needs to be someone high profile enough that like, if you book them on like Fallon or whatever, it's a big deal. Like, I don't know. I think the USFL could have benefited from like, can we bring Doug Flutie in on a retainer? Like, can we send him out? Can he do some like late night shows? I don't know. You need someone, you guys like, we need to get like a B-list, someone that can be on this, or someone. Dan is the spokesperson now. He was the one that had the quote last week when all the layoffs happened. Like, I don't think that's the right idea, but we need to have someone that can do some more public facing stuff.
I agree. Somebody who has enough clout, who can be able to talk about it. Right. And like, even if The Rock showed up on one of these talk shows, I don't think he's going to talk about the XFL. If I'm going to be honest, I think he's going to talk about other things that a wider audience cares about, if I'm just going to be honest. So with that said, then yeah, maybe you have to find either Danny has to drop all of her stuff, or you have to get somebody else involved that has enough clout, and maybe bring in another part owner of the league. I'm not sure who that would be exactly, but just there's got to be some more synergy here as far as what person comes in and is able to present the product in a more consistent fashion and is able to like tell people about what's going on, and maybe before the season starts, or get more appearances on ESPN. Again, ESPN programming is going to be, moving along like clockwork and going on to the next thing. So can you get people to like kind of keep him involved, to be like, hey, remember we have this league, by the way, that we re-promote and that we're broadcasting every spring. So just letting you know, this is the person that's going to talk about it. You got to have more stuff like that too.
And we talked about that as well, like promoting. I mean, they've done a good job with the signings and stuff, but like, can we get some interviews with even those guys, like Josh on there with like Darius Shepard, and I understand, and I don't know what contracts like that. Like once they go under contract with where Darius signed, was he with the Chargers? Was he the one that went to the Chargers?
Yes, Darius Shepard signed with the Chargers.
So like, I don't know then, like, okay, can we not do that because we got to deal with Chargers PR and stuff? Like, I don't know how that works, but it would be great if there was a way like, can Josh or whoever, can we get 5 minutes to just talk and like, what does this opportunity mean? Just things like that. It says here, the collective voice of XFL fans and local residents are quite smart, even if many of them have bad takes. Take a page out of what was done with Redbird's other stops at Toulouse, where there was a disconnection between ownership of the community, just like there is here, and get to know what XFL fans want and continue to instead of just a couple, like that. Do you agree with that? Do you agree that there seems to be a little bit of a disconnect between XFL ownership and what the XFL ownership thinks fans want and what the fans want?
Slightly. I think it's more of, again, just not devoting the resources that the fans expected from the first time around. But I think there was a lot more listening than there was interactivity between the two sides this season. And I think there was a lot more the XFL trying to accumulate information and trying to understand what exactly it is that fans are trying to gravitate towards and what they're looking at. Media members, what they're trying to do. Broadcasting crews, what they're trying to do. Trying to just get as much information as possible without trying to overstep their boundary. So, yes, there was a bit of disconnect in terms of that a level of familiarity, but I think in a way, in a weird analogy, I feel like it was like kind of like dating. Like the league was trying to redate its fans and think, okay, is this like a long-term proposition? Is they the kind of people that we want to have around for a long time? And like, what do they want? Like, what's their expectations? Kind of felt like that a little bit. And so I wouldn't say like it's an intentional disconnect. I think it was just more of feeling each other out in a way. The parties were trying to figure out, okay, what are you about? What are you doing? What's your goal? What's your set? And if they can figure that out and come to an agreement on that in the future, then that's great. I think that's more of what it was about, rather than an intentional or just very uncohesive relationship between the two.
I think so too. I agree with you. I think there's a slight disconnect. I think I would love to give truth serum to the 8, Danny and The Rock and Russ and like to get the 8. Like what really were your expectations coming into this year? Because I have a feeling that although we succeeded metrics and all of that, I don't think this is a failure. I mean, I think we've done a tremendous job. I've given them compliments. Like I think even if you take XFL 2020 away, like this is tremendous in the first year league and successes across the board. But I think they probably thought we're going to get a little bit more exposure outside, in more mainstream or more traditional things than maybe we got. And, when The Rock has Zoa come out and everything picks it up and it's in Vanity Fair and it's in Vogue and it's in like whatever, all these different things. And the XFL is a really niche, really, really niche. It's really niche. We're building that. We're working towards that. But, I'm curious what the expectations were for that and if we're going to reevaluate that. I don't think, like you said, it wasn't that they weren't listening. I think they were listening a lot. I think we're working through that now and trying to figure out what works and what didn't work. But I don't think the disconnect was intentional. I think it was more just maybe we're not going to be a top 4 or 5 sport, but we're going to be like top, 5.5. And I think so. We know it's like top 12 or whatever right now. It's like you got to work your way up here.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it is interesting to think about what the original expectations were from the outset of the buying of the league. And again, that was such a different era, right? We didn't know. I mean, we didn't know if we were going to have fans ever again at that point when they bought the league. So at that point, it was such experimentation as far as what's going to happen going forward. What are sports going to look like going forward? What's our relationship with the CFL going to be? There's so much nebulous uncertainty with so many things. But now, kind of looking at it, it's obvious to me that there wasn't maybe as much homework done on maybe the previous league. And as far as what fans wanted, like, again, the beer snake, there wasn't really much familiarity with that on their end. And some of the traditions, and I know they weren't very long traditions, but they were traditions nonetheless that were being established by those fan bases from those 8 teams before. So maybe there wasn't as much homework or much diligence that was done in that respect. It was more about like the financial aspects of owning the league and what was going to be done with it. And I understand that part. Again, this is coming from a very business-minded aspect with Danny and The Rock and Redbird Capital. And if you're going to survive for a long term, that's what it's going to have to be. But you got to balance it with research and with understanding of what exactly the people want. Because if you understand what they want and you give them what they want, that's going to help you a lot more in terms of your sustainability, not just trying to generate revenue, because fans are the lifeblood of any league and of any entity. And if you don't have them on your side, you're not going anywhere.
John says, "Let's be thankful. We're thankful, John. We're thankful, but this is the exercise today. This is where we're doing our homework. We're doing our exercise here." I will say, Andy, when you're talking about the potentially XFL ownership not knowing about the beer snake, you wouldn't be gatekeeping, would you? We're not doing any gatekeeping over here.
I could be if I really wanted to. I could.
No, I could. Really... no, because no, but it's. We don't have as long of a history as the CFL here, but the XFL does have some history. Last thing on this, and we have some action points moving forward. I think we'll be good time here with the two. Furthermore, discuss with fans what they want to hear from a broadcast. We've talked a little bit about the broadcast. Stop making the broadcast based on on an ownership vision, and start making it based on what fans watching these games actually want to hear. So they don't want to hear about XY player trying to make it to the NFL. They want to hear about plays, schemes, and storylines of the game. Max would also look, and I would agree, some of the broadcasting duos maybe did a little bit more homework than others. Like I said, I'm friends with every single person I've had with ESPN. Has been great on the show, but anything else from the broadcast narrative or the booth before we move on?
No, I agree. There needs to be more emphasis on the individual stories. I mean, like, you never hear about that at all in the USFL or the CFL. You hear only about the storylines of the players, where they came from, why they do this, and how they got here sometimes, and maybe what their skill set is, and really focusing more on that than just talking about like, oh, well, here's where they're going to go next. No one really talks about that. I don't even think the CFL broadcast ever mentioned that once with Rourke, even in the middle of his renaissance last year. That wasn't something they ever brought up, right? They weren't like, oh, can't wait to see him play, third string for, the Oakland Raiders or somebody next year, hopefully. And they never talked about, the Las Vegas Raiders. That's never going to die. But they are never going to bring that up out of their own volition. Whereas the XFL left and right was just talking about, we have our example on our notes here, but I already vividly remember it as Luke Barku, that quarterback for the Brahmas. They kept just going over and over and over again, saying like, "Oh, if he defends Josh Gordon, he's going back to the NFL." Okay, we get it, we understand. Again, what was I saying earlier in this broadcast? You can do things, but maybe not have to say them all the time. You can show it without having to speak it, right? And your audience can understand that. You understand MLS fans aren't going on about like, boy, it would really suck if we lost some of these players to another club for a little more money. Like they know if somebody improves enough, they're going to move on somewhere else. Like that in soccer, that happens all the time. That's not something that people, flip out about and being like, trying to say you don't have to pound that message into people's heads. So you don't have to do the same thing here either. I think ESPN, one thing I'll say last is ESPN maybe takes a little bit too much from the college aspect. Yes, we know the college players are going to move on. Like that's obvious. They still say they're like, we're going to see this guy play on Sundays. Okay, fine. That's fine presenting it that way. But with the XFL, there doesn't need to be that same messaging.
I agree with that. And I, as someone that lived through the Nathan Rourke experiment, so if you people don't follow the CFL, Nathan Rourke, Canadian player, came back, started for the BC Lions, played the greatest, probably one of the greatest single seasons ever in the history of the CFL, got injured. Now he's with the Jaguars, probably going to be the third string quarterback there. It was, I think, week 2. Oh my God. And it just, that was the media landscape the rest of the season until Nathan got hurt was he's going to go to the NFL. And can you believe this? And people care about the CFL now because Nathan and did like, it got so tired. I'm like, can we just watch the games? Can we just enjoy the games while they're here? Like it's such a distraction trying to watch the game and knowing like, yeah, Ben DiNucci probably isn't going to be the Seattle Sea Dragons quarterback next year. Like, I understand that, but I don't need to know that every single second that I'm watching these games. Oh, yeah, Ben, and when he gets there, like, I think there's a balance. I think that, again, this was the talking points this year. I think we need to, develop the talking points further with the XFL outside of Player 54. All right, we have our action items here, and then we're going to get out of here. We did good. This wasn't as scary as I thought it was going to be, so I appreciate everyone sticking around here. This is particular changes for next season and beyond. Number 1, we need to do a better job with sports betting and fantasy communications. We've talked about this, transparency. Do a better job sharing the hard information about football on leagues, social, and publicly archiving on the league's websites, inactive lists, injury reports, depth charts, etc. Get a real fantasy football partner. Why not ESPN? We talked about transparency, all of that. I mean, I'm happy to gain followers, sharing out depth charts and stuff like that. USFL now, they'll tweet them out from their main one. CFL, the teams do it. What do you want to see the XFL do?
Yeah, that is bizarre that ESPN does not do fantasy on their own app, considering that they broadcast the league. That is a little strange, isn't it? Especially if they're getting all this information anyways. And yeah, as far as sharing reports, one of the things I have to give the USFL credit for is that they post those reports, those inactive reports, consistently on their Twitter page. So like, and the player movement too, of people who are put on the inactive list, like that needs to be more consistent, and that has to be something the XFL absolutely needs to do more of. If people need to have that information, if they're going to make like lineup changes, or if they're going to understand, all right, well, this guy's probably not going to play. He hasn't practiced all week. I'm not going to risk it, right? You make those kind of educated decisions like you do with your NFL rosters. So for this case, yeah, I want to see maybe a partnership with DraftKings or somebody who can have more fantasy FanDuel, or somebody who at least you can say, hey, we'll give you the proper information so you're not left in the dark. And then here's the information that's going to be put out to our fans, and they can make their educated guesses as far as like what's going to happen or what they think is going to happen. And then you can go from there. That needs to be done more so. And that engagement is going to be so much more crucial for people who really want to be involved. Then, people might want to watch the games, right? So because people start to go on, and because people always want to bet, people are going to bet all the time. And if you start to have things that like you realize, oh, I have this player, this team, maybe I'm betting on, okay, well, I want to kind of check out some of their games. That's great. Awesome. Then you can really work on that. And so that's kind of what I agree with too. I agree with the ESPN point. I agree with making a partnership with a betting book.
It's what I feel like with in the USFL too, with these spring leagues, when they talk about fantasy, sports betting, all this stuff, and I know nothing about any of this, but I have brought on, Eric Eager and, Justin Freeman and the Run the Sims guys, all this, like, it feels like when I used to work in news, and because famously I was verified on Twitter before Elon came in and ruined the world. But when I worked at Q13, they go, all right, we're getting everybody here iPhones. You have to install Twitter, and you need to go out and you need to tweet. When you're out covering news, and so we go out like, I got to do this. We say we got like, what the hell? Okay, we go out. Okay, car accident. Okay, whatever. Like we have to do this. Feels like with same with XFL and USFL. Like they know in their head, like, okay, we have to talk about this. Like this is such a big thing. But we don't know, and I don't understand why you don't get any of these guys. Mark Drumheller that works for Yahoo Sports. Like this is okay. This isn't like if you don't want to deal with like Run the Sims or one of these. Like I think they're all legit. But if you don't want to, if you're the XFL, like we don't have a partner. Mark works for Yahoo Sports. Mark, can you come in here? Can you do a 6-minute? I know Stormy does it a little bit. I think Stormy's better doing the interviews on that. Like, can you actually talk about like the fantasy lineups here and what's going on? Can you actually talk about the betting odds? Like, again, keep Stormy. Stormy's great. Utilize that different. Bring in someone that's all they do is do this and figure out what the hell we're supposed to talk about, because I'm tired of Ian Fitzsimmons standing on the sidelines at Cashman Field holding his over-under ticket and cheering that the team missed the field goal because it preserved his under. Like, I don't know of it. People that really care about sports betting aren't really giving an S about the over under. They're betting, like they're playing fantasy and they have our lineups and all that stuff. Like that's the most basic thing. And I almost think it's insulting to people that really want to pay fantasy to play fantasy when you have people like Ian, I got my under here. Like I'm so like that's like level 1 of 1,000 in sports betting. Like you're catering to you're almost dumbing down to the people that actually want to pay your play with your product at that point.
Yeah, it feels so vaudeville in a way, like this really old style of like, go to the horse races and be like, I bet on, the horse named Lucky Shoe. I don't know, something like
Sounds
that.
good. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. That's exactly what it sounds like. So I agree with you. I don't understand why there's not a designated person that comes in and just talks about betting lines. They have networks are getting that all the time. Fox has that with the USFL. Fox is getting that with the USFL. There was a guy I can't remember his name, but they presented it last week where he gave like, oh, here's the over under I'm looking at. This is why. Here's the spread I'm looking at for this reason. He gives his picks and he's out. Like that's cool. That was like a 1-minute spot. You don't need really much emphasis on those kinds of things like all the time, but you at least get people involved in terms of like having a guy who knows about this stuff and is able to explain it to the audience. A little bit of fantasy here, a little bit of fantasy there, get more of that involved, because if you don't talk about that, people aren't going to be engaged in that part of your product, and that disengages them from it overall. So you need to get somebody who can talk about that on these shows. I mean, the XFL preview show that you've highlighted, like they need to do more of that on there too, or somewhere, anywhere that they can get somebody more involved and be able to explain those things.
Also, currently, and again, because this is things we can build to, I think we need to generate more sports betting and gambling and fantasy. I bet you right now there are far fewer people actually doing this than the XFL thinks. Because like I'll talk with, who is it? It was the guy from Run the Sims on 2 weeks ago. Oh, the Furby guy, Furby. And I'm like, how's this going? He goes, well, like week 1, it was pretty hot, and the pot for like we were talking USFL, the pot was like 100,000. You could go on and win your pot of like 100,000, right? If you're playing whatever DFS or whatever on this site. Last week or whatever, it was like $1,000 because there just wasn't enough. They're like, well, you can't give that. We got to figure out how to do this. Like, if you're going to do fantasy, really do it. But otherwise, talking ad nauseum about all of the over and unders, there are not that many people doing it currently. And I don't think that they realize that. Like, I think there's either a disconnect. Like, we either need to ignore it because no one's doing it, or we need to build into it and do a better job not insulting the people that are doing it.
I think they need to build into it. I really do think there are people that are engaged with it and want to be engaged with it. Like, again, trying to do it rogue is just really tough. I love that Mike Mitchell has his team, and he talks about, he comes out and he goes like, oh, I'm really glad that Alonzo Moore is doing really well. And, I'm happy for him. I'm glad that he's getting those points, but Mike can't be the only one doing that. It can't just be this inner circle of people who are doing this. You need to capitalize on this interest of people who can actually get involved in the product. CFL needs to keep doing a better job of that too. By the way, they need to push their chips in more on the table on that, because like you have the infrastructure to do it, you have the players, you need to be able to give people reasons to put more into that. And I know it's kind of a slower build for them with the Genius Sports and PFF and getting more information out there, but they have to be able to push that button too, because again, people want to do that. There are people who want to do that all the time. There are people whose lifestyles revolve around that.
Scott Dickerson, I can't remember, it was earlier in the chat. He said, the XFL needs to work with Genius Sports. I go, no. That's CFL's move. That's CFL. They're working with Genius Sports. We got all this going on here. We have a lot of stuff about Vegas here. I don't want to dive too deep into that because, I mean, obviously people are unhappy with that. But I think moving forward, I think the XFL and Max has in here, they need to do far more research about what markets and stadiums will work for spring football. Like going into Vegas, not necessarily having a plan there. The Orlando thing we've talked about, I don't know, Camping World, but then they can't play at the MLS stadium there or whatever. Like in terms of market research, and this is a conversation I'm sure we'll talk XFL expansion here, for years to come. But any other thoughts on picking markets?
I mean, again, I don't know if there's going to really be any shifting of markets at this juncture, because they're still just trying to establish themselves in the markets that they're already in. And as far as Vegas goes, look, I mean, there's a lot to be talked about here, especially with the fact that obviously the entire sales team is gone now. You only had 6,000 people really on average coming to your games, and the location's not great. You're not getting a new stadium now because you're not getting an MLS team. And so you're not going to have that venue to really work off of. So what's your alternative strategy? My thing is like, I would really try to appeal to people who, one, I think you need to fix up the field a little bit. That goes without saying. But two, appeal to people who can spend money on a product that's good and that it's not extortionist price. Let me tell you something, Reed. I just got tickets last night. I have a bachelor party that I'm going to with my friend to Vegas because he is a huge Raiders fan. He wants to go to a game. We decided we're going to a preseason game. Just a preseason game in August. You know how much the ticket cost for me, just me alone, to go to a preseason game in Vegas for the Raiders? It cost $171 for a preseason game. That's extortionist price. And I can't believe that the XFL doesn't appeal to that market more, being like, look how affordable we are for this product compared to everybody else. College, there's colleges that spend more money on tickets than the XFL. And the NFL obviously just has just flowing out of the pocketbooks. You have to be able to appeal to that crowd and just be able to do that. But you can't also do this thing. I don't think the USFL strategy really works either, of the we got $1 beer, $1 soda and $1 corn dogs. Like
that's devalues too much. That is,
right. So you got to be able to at least keep it at a fair price, but at least a reasonable enough to say like, hey, look, this is accommodable for people. Like, because here's the thing, here's the psychology for people. If you spend money on something that's really not, can be a sunk cost where it's just not that much. If you don't end up going to the game and it's not worth it, then you've kind of lost the interest, right? You need to at least give it to a fair amount of price where it's like, okay, I've spent a decent amount of money on this. I'm not going to just skip out on this. Whereas if you devalue it too much, then it's just like, well, I only spent $10 and I don't really feel like going today because I don't know, I got some shopping to do. That's just the psychology of people sometimes, right? That just happens. You have to be careful about how much something is really worth to somebody. But again, at least point to something and say like, hey, look, you don't have to spend this much money on this thing, right? Let's be real. That game I'm going to, that preseason game, I'm probably going to see a bunch of all football league players playing in that game. Like obviously, maybe a CFL player trying to make the roster, an XFL player, or a USFL player. It's going to be kind of funny, actually, ironic in hindsight, seeing that, people that I would have seen just months earlier for a much cheaper price. So maybe appeal to that too.
I'm saying so for $9 more, you could come see the trilogy with Enrique Iglesias, Ricky Martin, and Pitbull there here at Climate Points. No, I get what you're saying, and it's the USFL is at that point now where it and the CFL, two things. The CFL is at the point where their season tickets are not. It is that sunk cost. For last night of the Calgary game, I think they had 17,000, whatever. It was the record lowest ever since the turn of the century for the CFL game, because you get these people that, I'm just not going to go to the game. Like it's a Thursday. I ate too much. I'm full. I'm tired, whatever. I don't want to go. USFL is the same way too. Like, come get $1 hot dog at the thing. Like, tell me no one is coming to your game more. Like, please. But yet we don't care about attendance. But yet all we do every week is like promote, like, please come. Please, we don't care about that. Like, we don't want you to come, but please care about this. Like, USFL is at that point where I think they have devalued. I think they've devalued even in just 2 seasons. I think they devalued the worth of going to an actual USFL game. I don't want to see the XFL do that because remember, with both the XFL and the USFL, we spent all this time maximizing the on-air broadcast, right? Oh, we can see Dean and we can hear all this. We've got the play call and all that. So why do people want to come out to your stadium? You need to figure out, you need to make that worthwhile. You need to figure out like, well, because we're going to be doing, like in stadium stuff. And maybe we have, what was it? USFL had Kenny Chesney play, whoever it was come play, or was that Tim McGraw, like play between, like, we need to do things because you've almost made your on-air broadcast too good now that you need to incentivize people to come back out because it's way easier to sit on my couch.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And that's always a tough balance, right? Between being there in person and just watching it on TV. It's kind of a tough balance to keep. And I mean, for the XFL, I think there's enough from the on-field product and the USFL that there's like enough on the on-field product that can engage people, but there has to be other things that go on. There's other bells and whistles that maybe you need to have that will actually keep people engaged as far as being able to show up and have some sort of experience, right? A fan experience.
A couple last things here. I was just looking on here. Anyone thinks that like Max, who helped prepare the notes today, if anyone thinks that Max is like the USFL stand, I'm reading here about XFL failing on a lot of things. So just keep in mind, like Max is critical about all this stuff too, as much as he wants to do it. Last couple notes. Furthermore, you need to stop assuming that fans will follow a league or any team just because they exist. This isn't a major league sport. You have to build a fan base. You need people deeply attached. And this is always like the USFL's thing, like. And like you ask, and I think it was Danny and Jerry when they were on. It was that like the TED Talkie like thing that they had last year where they came and talk like, hey, they're like asking Jerry, like, so why did Redbird like want to get involved in football? And it's like, well, people like football. It's more football. People want football. We want to air. And when you even ask like, CFL people like John Hodge was on, hey John, like, so like, what's the deal with the American TV deal? Like, what? It's like, well, we know Americans like football. Like, so CFL, like, you like the CFL needs to market itself in America very differently than the XFL does, but neither one can just be like, well, because it's football. People like football. The USFL is showing, I mean, I think demonstrably showing like just putting football on, you're going to attract somewhere between 600,000 to 800,000. USFL has not topped 1 million this year, save for the Kentucky Derby or Preakness game or whatever, where they did the 2 million. But like, you need to do more than just football on field. Like, that is the Brian Woods model that we saw that in the spring league for years. I just think there's a ceiling there.
There is certainly a ceiling, at least from a broadcast standpoint. Again, we don't know what the streaming numbers are. Well, that's always the curiosity factor here, but that audience has its limits. There are people who will watch football no matter what, but there are also a lot of periphery people who don't watch football. Like, putting it this way, it's kind of funny. Like, I always put it in context of like, oh wow, this many people watch this. Like, this many people watch the Super Bowl. Well, there are millions and millions of other people who do not watch sports at all in this country, who just do not care. And so like, you have to account for that factor as well. And as far as like, when you start getting into these niche sections, you're not going to just pull over all the people from the NFL or pull over these casual people who like happen to watch an NFL game, and then they're not going to suddenly just be interested in the CFL or the USFL or the XFL. You have to work to get people involved in those products. That's how it is.
How many times have you heard like, and Hodge said it, and I don't want to, I mean, this isn't like pooping on John Hodge, but this is the mindset, like, X number of million people watch this. If we just got 5% of those, if we just got 2% of those, if we just got 10%, it's like, that's a failing strategy. Like, you need to like, what makes you stand out? And like we said at the top, the comment I had that really struck with me, the XFL feels like if the NFL was not here, the XFL would not have a place, right? Because like we put people in the NFL. Like if you ask someone on the street, like, what is XFL messaging telling you right now? Well, it's telling me people play here to go to the other place. Well, what if there was no NFL? Well, I don't know. Like that is what. So you need to figure out how to, if that makes sense. But I hate this. Well, if we just got a sliver of that large percentage, like we would be, I don't know. I live in the wedding industry here. Like, oh, 30,000 people in King County get married every year. Like if you just got, yeah, but like I need like, why do people want to hire me than anyone else? Like you can't just say, oh, because I exist. Like that's enough.
Yeah, no, I think that's like feeding off table scraps, and that's not the mentality you need to have with attracting people. You need to be able to build your own interest, not just because, oh, well, it's kind of peripherally interested from this other entity. You need to actually build upon, like, generate your own interest. I think that's an argument that doesn't really work with building out any sort of general interest in your product. I agree with you in that regard. So I think another thing that can be done as far as attracting other people and other numbers, again, is presenting it as maybe something new, something innovating, not just football as people know it, but something beyond that. And, maybe a more entertaining product. I mean, I don't understand why. And that's the thing with the CFL. That's what kind of makes me laugh, is just like, well, if we just got this percentage of people from the NFL, I'm like, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't go the other way, because look, no one's familiar with the game down here. I'm sorry. It took years for me to jump on the train, and I've been watching football most of my life. And most people don't engage with it because there's not really a method or a reason to engage with it. And that is a big deal. You have to almost go a different way, like take a different route instead of just the football audience. Think about other audiences, right? And I know, look, I'm sure there's some marketing exec who's probably typing in the chat right now that's telling me how wrong I am. But look, there's got to be an alternative strategy to approaching this besides just saying, oh, person watches football, they would watch this too. I don't know, would they?
For anyone, and I love the CFL. I love the CFL. I watched every snap of the game last night. For any of the CFL people that so ESPN went into this deal with Disney and ABC and all this. Like, we're doing the XFL thing, because Fox is different, because like they own the USFL outright, right? This is a totally different scenario. Like, we're going to invest in this. Like, if the CFL, and I love the CFL, if there was such a hot property here, why wouldn't ESPN just go, this is already produced for, like, we'll give that money, come here. Like, we don't need to deal. Like, they're already, like, why would we go into bed with, and obviously it's because it's, American football and Danny and The Rock. And like, I understand, like the XFL is bringing a lot more, but ESPN couldn't find anyone to market half their games to this year. That's why they're giving them away for free on TV, on streaming. And that's great. And the CBS Sports Network deal is great for the summer games, but CFL was only able to find a suitable home for half of their games in the United States, because half their season airs opposite the NFL and college. But it is interesting with the CFL fans. It's like, yeah, but yet ESPN decided to go with the XFL when they were airing your games last year. Like, okay, tell me that's a hot product right now in America. And I love the CFL.
Yeah, I mean, and they never promoted the CFL ever. Like, they never promoted it. It was just there. It's like, oh, it's on ESPN News today. Okay, cool. Like, there was zero promotion about it ever in any sense. Whereas CBS has at least done a little bit more. We've seen them, send ad promos. Nance promoted it. There's like at least a little more effort on that end, because maybe there's more skin in the game for them to actually promote it, as opposed to ESPN, who may have just been like, kind of a toss away rights fee of just filling programming for that day. So there's maybe a little bit more skin in the game for CBS to do it.
Last point here, this is good. I appreciate that. But they need to XFL needs to approach every person from the top down who is running the business side. Like, has Russ Brandon, like, what connections is he pulling in now from the business side? They have the former Browns president, Alec Scheener, right? One of the Redbird partners in the firm. Has he been involved? Like, if we're doing these layoffs, restructuring, moving people around, like, are we further utilizing enough to the like, is Russ Brandon utilizing the maximum that he can? Or all these people from top to bottom, now that we've shed the dead weight? I hate seeing people get let go and all the layoffs, but are we utilizing all these execs to the highest quality?
I don't think so. And I think Russ Brandon could be utilized a little bit better. But again, he's doing a lot of behind the scenes work. So I want him to get out there more. I want to see him more presented, but it's just not happening. And there's more emphasis on Danny and Dwayne when they're available. But again, keyword being there, when they're available, not when it's convenient for everybody else. And so if you're going to do that, you have to get some of these higher up execs, or like we were saying just a few moments ago, just getting another person involved that can actually present all of this and has the time and the dedication to present all of it, instead of it somebody just, flying in last minute to kind of just give it a formal announcement.
The last thing on here, and this is, I think, kind of probably, if you want to devolve everything we've said in the last 2 hours here to this, and then we'll get out of here. We'll do final thoughts. More TV marketing in itself will not be the answer. More national TV slots in itself will not be the answer. Better scheduling in of itself is not the answer. The deep problem has to do with the lack of connection to the product, not the product itself. Awareness is not enough. That's kind of Max's final thoughts. I feel concurrence with that. What do you make?
I mean, I think that they still should do more of it. Like, I know it's not the only answer, but there needs to be more of it. Like, but I think the connection to the product, I don't know what Max is really getting on about here as far as connection to the product, because I think the product itself connects itself to the fans. I don't think that's the problem. I think the problem is there's not as much bridge building between the product and the fans by the league itself, but the product is not like insufficient in a way that I think it doesn't connect with people.
Yeah,
that's okay. So in that regard, I mean, I don't know what the answer would be then, besides I gave my suggestions. As I said, get the banners out there, get the social media more involved, get, better scheduling, get local TV marketing better promoted, get more of that, get people to involve themselves more and care about the players, the profiles. I think we've covered all of this, in my opinion. See, I disagree. I think people have been convinced. They just haven't convinced enough people. I disagree full-heartedly with that statement. People have enough reason to, when you get involved, I think they are involved. It's just reaching out to people and literally just telling people that it exists. I think that's literally what the issue is here, not that they're not feeling involved.
It's good. Max just put, if you're listening on the podcast, Max is commenting in the chat. People haven't been convinced that they need to watch the product. I think it's both sides. I think, like we said, and I've always said, we'll get out of here. I think XFL is far more CFL than it is. I think USFL kind of pretends to do that. Okay, we've got the mascots and we're kind of like bandit peed and we're out. And I know they're doing community stuff. I don't know. Fox I always get BDE with them, and it just never feels the same. I want one of these leagues to not realize, but I think, like, at least for the short term, accept like the CFL. We send people out. We're in the communities. We're in the schools. We're building in the local things. Like, it's more of that than NFL of we just put it on and people watch. I think it's like we've said, combination in person, on TV, and the marketing and all of that. But it's far more CFL. Like, we're drumming up grassroots support right now than it is NFL puts a draft on and 18 million people watch or whatever.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's not just people aren't just going to flock to it immediately. You have to be able to push and be able to advertise it better. But once people do, I do believe that they'll be engaged with what's actually being presented. And in some ways, I feel that way still about other leagues like the CFL in a way, because I think there's more that could be said there that could be done and presented, and yet isn't being done. And for the XFL, I think that they have to be able to push that out a little bit further.
Well, there we go. I think we did it today. We'll get final thoughts from Andy, but I'll set the stage before we go. Appreciate everyone sticking around. Don't forget, Monday, if you watched our CFL pregame show last night, Jason Hussey will join me again. We're going to recap and analyze CFL Week 1. Pat Ruffino, not to be left out in the cold. Pat will be with me on Tuesday. We'll talk through the USFL Week 9 ratings, all the games, kind of all that stuff. Andy, highest viewed USFL podcast right now. Wild. Wow. Pat and I doing that, and Andy's been a part of that as well. I attribute Andy to that, but wild to think that the USFL Haiti Markcast, highest viewed USFL podcast right now on YouTube, but that is what it is. But exciting stuff there. We're trying to figure out, both those will be at 9 a.m. Pacific. And then we're trying to figure out the XFL rookie draft. We will be doing coverage for that, no matter what that looks like, whether I got to go be in the parking lot somewhere and do it before I got to go in and do the show or whatever. Like, we'll figure it out. I want to be a part of that. John Lewis says, awesome guy. John Lewis stayed with us the entire time of all the work. Appreciate the time and effort both of you put into covering these leagues. John Lewis and I appreciate that. John, a friend of the podcast, everything else. Andy, anything else from you before we get out of here? 2 hours.
I mean, it probably could have gone 3 more, but I appreciate all of the work done by you, and I appreciate all the people tuning in. My last thought is, listen, I say all of this in the past 2 hours with respect and admiration for the league, and I want them to do better because I believe in what they have to offer. And I think it's just more of the overall sense of what are they doing and how can they present this better, because I feel very similarly about people from other leagues who present their product and really feel as passionately about it. They just want it to be pushed out more and be able to be presented in a more transparent fashion. And I feel the same way about this. So this all comes from admiration and respect for the league, but there's always things that can be done better. And I think every fan base and every league could always feel that way no matter what.
I am a firm believer in nothing was ever improved by sitting around and saying this is fine. I have, like you said, tremendous respect for all of this. I will say there are, same with the USFL fan podcasts out there that sit every week and go, this is the greatest thing. That's great. That's great. I enjoy the product. I wanted to get better until we have years of success in this. There's always need to be concerns, and we want to do everything we can. I don't like unforced errors. Don't want unforced errors. Want to do everything we can. Appreciate everyone. I'll get this out of here. Like and subscribe. I'm sure anyone that's 2 hours into this is subscribed at this point, but if you're not, I appreciate that. We'll see you next time.